In this week's drive, we take a fire to where all the fuel is kept. Trade paint and bang wheels on the way out. Mow them down like 9 pins in a cloud of dust. And go out in a blaze of nighttime glory. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with Formula One's entry into China. The BMW Williams team recruited Chinese driver Tung for a test session last year. 22-year-old Tung, who hails from Wenzhou, 500 kilometers south of Shanghai, was noticed by taking 12 pole positions and 10 wins from just 14 starts on his way to winning the 2003 Formula BMW Asia Series. Tung, who is based in the Netherlands, joined the team again at a recent test session to share his knowledge of the Shanghai circuit, and he can't wait to welcome Formula One to his country.
Hello friends of the BMW Williams team and Formula One fans, welcome to Shanghai.
Tung is currently racing in Formula 3 with the VAR team, but knows all about the growing interest in Formula One in his homeland. He believes that the inaugural Grand Prix in Shanghai could start an upsurge of interest in the sport in China, and the signs are already good.
Racing is getting more and more popular in China. I already noticed last year when I raced at the Golden Port track in Beijing with the Formula BMW. There was a huge crowd, and I'm sure when Formula One, well, the highest level of car racing will come to China, there'll be massive interest for it.
The season has been a dreadful one for the Williams team. Their best points tally came in the opening race in Australia in March, with Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya claiming 4th and 5th places. Both drivers will move to new teams at the end of the season. Montoya will join McLaren, while Schumacher switches to Toyota next year. However, Montoya is still motivated for the first race in China.
Well, to be honest with you, I've seen the track in a map and it looks very, very challenging. I think the thing of going to Shanghai, it's a really nice experience for me. I'm really looking forward to go there, actually. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Ralf Schumacher suffered spinal fractures after running into a wall at the US Grand Prix in Indianapolis in June. The German will get back in his car for the first time in Shanghai and is impressed by the safety features built into the new racetrack.
I like the more modern circuits for one simple fact. First of all, it's something different and safer. You know, the new technology, you have a lot of runoff, better pits, so it's a lot better for the crew to work.
Mark Webber and Jenson Button will drive for the team next year, but Tung will be hoping for a seat in the near future. Shanghai has spent at least $325 million creating an ultra-modern circuit, and their investment in the track and surrounding infrastructure is already earning rave reviews.
We've been trying to do something there for 10 years in China, and it's not been easy to get the right place, and I always wanted to be where we are. So we waited until we got what we wanted. I've got a feeling about Asia will be ruling the world in the next decade, so maybe that's where we'll be.
Shanghai fans got a preview earlier this year when Gerhard Berger drove last year's car to celebrate a new Ferrari dealership and collect data. Other teams have to use educated guesswork.
The team can use its own simulation tools, to create a very likely and generally very accurate scenario of what we'll encounter, the likely speed and performance of the cars, and of course the best way to set up the cars.
We have what's the equivalent of a big Sony PlayStation, I guess, slightly more advanced, but nonetheless it's the same sort of thing, and you can get a visual of what the track will look like when you're actually driving.
Some drivers, including BAR's Anthony Davidson and Jenson Button, have walked the Shanghai track to examine the first corner, nicknamed the Snail, a daunting spiral on a steep slope. When Berger demonstrated Michael Schumacher's championship-winning car there, he reported that he hadn't got a clue how to drive round that first corner, as it seemed to be 2 or 3 corners in one. He said that all of the teams would find it difficult to set up their cars to make the most of all of them.
It is cambered though, isn't it? All the way around, you can see it's like...
But, oh, how hard?
Race officials are confident of a 200,000 full house, despite Michael Schumacher having already claimed the championship.
The layout is very important to us because we want to have a good race. We want there to be overtaking, but we also want the circuit to be very exciting with some high-speed corners.
The value of China as a market for the team's sponsors is huge. Last year, 6 of the 16 races were outside Europe. This year, 8 of the 18 races are outside Europe, including Bahrain and Shanghai.
The Chinese market is one of the most important markets to all consumer brands and a number of major companies around the world now. They see this as the next frontier. And to have a Grand Prix there at such a state-of-the-art circuit is going to be a phenomenal sort of boost for Formula One.
So China is, for most people, one of the very last major commercial opportunities available left in the world.
The city of Shanghai will apparently pay $40 million a year to host a Grand Prix for the next 7 years. They'll be hoping for an exciting race. Jaguar will pull out of Formula One at the end of the year, with parent company Ford's engine maker Cosworth also up for sale. Cosworth supplies engines to the Jordan and Minardi teams. Ford earlier announced a reorganisation at its loss-making Jaguar factory, cutting 1,100 jobs in Coventry in England. Jaguar could not compete dollar for dollar with German rivals BMW and Mercedes, partners to Williams and McLaren, and it was not in Jaguar's long-term interests to be at the back of the grid. World champions Ferrari and rivals Toyota have estimated budgets in excess of $200 million a year. One of the most evocative names in motorsport, but better known as a Le Mans sports car mark, Jaguar entered Formula One in 2000 after Ford took over the Stewart team, founded by 3-time world champion Jackie Stewart. They've never won a Grand Prix and are currently 7th in the 10-team championship, a point ahead of Toyota. Ford's involvement in Formula One spans decades. Their engines powered Lotus to the 1968 Constructors' Championship and won titles with teams such as Matra, Tyrrell, McLaren and Williams. Ford engines have won 176 races since 1967. Jarno Trulli, this year's Monaco Grand Prix winner, will join Toyota with immediate effect. Former world champion Jacques Villeneuve will take his place before leaving the French team to drive for Sauber next year. Renault thanked Trulli for his contribution during the past 3 years. Villeneuve hasn't raced for almost a year since leaving BAR in acrimonious circumstances. He arrived in Formula One as a fast but idiosyncratic rebel in 1996 and won the title with a Renault-powered Williams the next year. The Sauber move brings Villeneuve closer to Ferrari, the team of his late father Gilles, since the team has Ferrari engines and has close ties with Maranello. Schumacher's record is awesome. Most wins ever, 82, most podiums ever, 136, most fastest laps, 65, and he's just 3 pole positions short of Ayrton Senna's record of 65. This year, Ferrari drivers have finished on the podium 26 times from the 30 races that they've started, claiming 13 wins. Brno in the Czech Republic was the setting for the 9th of 10 stages in the 2004 DTM calendar. Matthias Ekström took a 13-point championship lead into the race as he closed in on a first DTM title. Starting from pole, the Swede made a great start, holding the advantage round the first corner. Frank Bieler and Manuel Reuter weren't quite so lucky, colliding with one another and spinning at the first turn. Lap 7 saw Dutchman Christian Albers hit Dane Tom Christensen as he left the pits. Christensen spun but was able to claw his way back to finish second. Gary Paffett, meanwhile, had another solid race. The Briton would finish third, enough to take him up into second place in the championship. He made a lightning-fast pit stop to edge past Marcel Fassler, who wasn't about to give up the place without a very robust fight. But there was no doubt about the star of the day, and indeed the season. It was another near-perfect performance from Ekström as he led from start to finish to claim his 4th win of the season and an unbeatable lead at the top of the standings. Just one race remains in 2004, and Ekström has a 20-point advantage over Paffett.
I mean, I can really not tell you right now because it did not really sink in, but for sure I'm very happy, and the moment when I crossed the finish line, it's amazing.
This was the 26-year-old Swede's first DTM title. The single remaining race of the 2004 season takes place at Hockenheim in Germany in 2 weeks' time. There was a huge crowd around the 3.2-kilometer oval in Fontana, California. The NASCAR race began in 36-degree heat in the late afternoon and ended in the cooler temperatures after dark under California Speedway's new lights. The event was round 25 of the 34-race series. Brian Vickers started on pole position and led several times during the 250-lap, 4-hour race, but would end the night in 13th place. The first caution came out on lap 33 when J.J. Yeley spun in turn 2 and then was slammed by Brendan Gaughan. The replay showed Yeley high on the track with flames coming out from under his car before Gaughan crashed into him.
Check it out.
Later on lap 72, Greg Biffle blew a tyre which did some damage to his rear end but managed not to involve any other cars in the wreck.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of...
Jimmy Spencer lost control of his car on lap 116 and took Shane Himmel with him onto the infield grass.
Oh, and just gets into Biffle, which Shane Hill was right underneath him, although Shane looked like he was sliding up the racetrack anyway.
I think Biffle came down to try.
Then, from a restart after a caution due to debris on the track, Kurt Busch lost control on lap 178, but the rest of the field managed to avoid the trouble.
Got arrow loose.
I think that's right. I think he was really gave him the slide job off the corner and about.
The worst crash of the day came with just 17 laps to go. On lap 234, Ken Schrader and Dale Earnhardt Jr. went into the wall, but it was Schrader's car that burst into flames.
Outside on the restart, so he can just make a run at Elliott and not have to worry about trying to get back by Casey Kane. And you saw the pump.
Finally, it was Elliott Sadler who was in the lead on the final lap, and he took the checkered flag for just the second time this year. But rookie Casey Kane, who finished second for the 5th time this season, and Mark Martin both climbed into the top 10 in the points table. After one remaining race at Richmond, Virginia, NASCAR pairs the championship battle down to the top 10 drivers for the last 10 races of the season. All Sadler has to do is start the race at Richmond to secure his place in NASCAR's new Chase for the Cup.
We got 2 more races to go, and then we get...
5 different manufacturers filled the first 7 places on the grid for the Spa 1000 kilometers, the final race of this year's Le Mans Endurance Series. Nicholas Manassian started in pole position in the Zytek, the only driver to go below 2 minutes and 6 seconds round the historic track. But it was the Audi of Jamie Davies and Johnny Herbert which took control early on in the 144-lap race. The Kaffer McNish Audi had qualified second fastest, but had to retire when their car burst into flames, putting them out of the running for the title. Davies persevered, though Rinaldo Capello, also in an R8, stayed close. Davies and Herbert took the win and the title with a victory that seemed unlikely. A crash brought out the first safety car of the season, allowing Rinaldo Capello and Pierre Kaffer to pull out nearly a lap. Kaffer was sidelined by the crash that set his car alight, and Capello lost all the time gained under a second safety car, and Herbert soon claimed the lead. Capello and Seiji Ara came second.
It was, it's great for the team. I mean, the Velox and the Audi team, they've worked incredibly hard for the result, and it's just a fantastic result for the team and also for me and Johnny. I mean, Johnny drove superbly at the beginning of the race and gave me a car which I was able just to work with, and, we managed to take the victory and the championship, which is perfect for us.
Having started on pole, Manassian made contact with Kaffer at the first corner, puncturing a rear tyre. From 40th position, the Frenchman fought back into the top 10, and Jamie Campbell-Walter brought the car up to 3rd by the end. The 8th round of Speedway's Grand Prix season took the competitors to the Grand Prix of Poland. Local hero Tomasz Golob forced a rerun in the first semi-final when he took out Norway's Rune Holter on the first bend. Initially, it seemed that Holter might have been injured in the crash, but he got up to stay in the competition. Australian Lee Adams got the best start as the quartet got away more cleanly the second time around, but it was Golob who came through to qualify for the final. Holter held off Adams and current world champion Nicky Pedersen of Denmark to grab second, forcing both Adams and Pedersen out of the Grand Prix. With the world title still up for grabs, points leader Jason Crump was the man to beat, and Gollop was the man to do it. The second semi saw Australian Crump ease his way into the final, with his closest challenger in the standings, Tony Rickardsson, taking second place. There was disappointment for the Polish crowd as Jaroslav Humpel was eliminated along with Britain's Scott Nicholls. The final got off to an awkward start. Holter returned Gollop's earlier favour by nudging the Polish superstar into the barriers, and with Rickardsson also falling off, the final heat had to be restarted. Multiple world champ Rickardsson wasn't going to miss the final, though. When they got away a second time, it was Gollop who took up the running and never looked back. The 33-year-old local boy, who was searching for his third straight win in this event, but also his first podium finish of the season, powered home with plenty to spare for his 12th career Grand Prix win. Crump kept out Rickardsson to take second, with Holter a creditable fourth, his best result of the year. While Gollop made several victory laps for his ecstatic supporters, it was clear that with both Crump and Rickardsson both scoring well, Pedersen's reign as world champion will end at the final round of the season. Greg Hancock's 13th place finish knocked him out of the running too, leaving Crump and Rickardsson at the top of the log. They will battle it out for the world crown at the Viking Ship Stadium in Hamar in Norway. Only a complete disaster could have prevented Stefan Everts from securing an 8th world motocross title at the penultimate stage of the 2004 season in Ireland. The Belgian held a 93-point lead over Michael Pichon of France. It would take 4 non-finishes from Everts and 4 victories for Pichon to deny him another title. No surprises then, as Everts and Pichon pulled clear in race 1. The Frenchman won, but 22 points for second was enough to win the title. Stefan Everts is the most successful rider in motocross world championship history. Winner of 78 Grand Prix so far, the Belgian claimed his 8th title in Ireland, 25 years after his 4 times world champion father Harry. Stefan has won world titles with Suzuki, Kawasaki and now Yamaha. With an advantage over Pichon of 90 points and 75 to race for, Everts could afford to relax, but that isn't Stefan's style, and just to prove that, Everts followed up with victory in the second race. Second place went, perhaps unsurprisingly, to Michael Pichon. Third went to New Zealand's Joshua Coppins, as it had in the first race. The final stage of the championship takes place at Sun City, South Africa, before the Motocross of Nations at Lierop in the Netherlands a week later. Everts could conceivably end the year with over 700 points, the equivalent of 28 race wins. He will defend the title next year and could set even more records before retiring. Another world champ was crowned at the final event of the Outdoor Trials World Championship in Switzerland. Dougie Lamkin's 7-year reign as world champion came to an end, despite 2 superb performances in the final event. It would have required superlative riding by Dougie Lamkin and catastrophe to befall Takahisa Fujinami if the Japanese was to miss out on the world title.
40 now!
Lamkin kept his side of the bargain. The British Repsol Montesa rider did as much as he could to hold on to his crown, taking the top honours in both Saturday and Sunday's events. Fujinami came to Switzerland with a 24-point lead in the standings. Comfortable, but nothing could be taken for granted with 40 points on offer in the Swiss countryside. One major slip and the direction of the title could have tilted in Lamkin's favour. After picking up 15 points for third on Saturday, he needed just 2 points on Sunday and the title would be Fujinami's. He managed much better than that. Second place, well adrift of Lamkin score-wise, but enough to win. Second place on Saturday, third on Sunday, wasn't enough for Adam Raga to overhaul Lamkin. The Spanish indoor world champion ended the outdoor season with 254 points, 8 adrift of Lamkin. Jeroni Fajardo finished 4th and moved to 6th in the championship. Fujinami collected 32 points from round 9, giving him 282 for the season to become the first ever Japanese World Trials champion, and only the second off-road champion from his country, the last being Akira Watanabe, who won the 125 motocross title for Suzuki in 1978. Fujinami spent the last 5 years as runner-up to Lamkin and was runner-up to Raga in this year's indoor title too. The MotoGP season has a few rounds still to go, but the latest event was in Japan, home to the four giants of the motorcycle world. Yamaha's world champ Valentino Rossi leads the title chase. Japan's Makoto Tamada claimed his first pole position for Honda at the Pacific Grand Prix, but he lost the lead of the race almost immediately after a slow start. Suzuki's John Hopkins collided with Loris Caparossi's Ducati, causing a crash that would force Americans Nicky Hayden, Kenny Roberts and Colin Edwards out of the race. Italians Max Biaggi and Caparossi were also out of the race on the first corner. The slight gap which formed behind Rossi was quickly made up by Tamada, who chased the Italian over the opening stages of the race and made his attack on the 6th lap, taking the lead to the delight of the record 67,000-strong crowd. The pair went head-to-head for the remainder of the race, but Rossi was unable to match Tamada's electric pace in the closing laps. Further down the field, another local favourite, Kawasaki's Shinya Nakano, was battling with Marco Melandri's Yamaha for third place in Kawasaki's best ever showing. Once he'd passed Rossi, Tamada opened up a big gap on the way to a second win of the season. He also won the Rio Grand Prix earlier in the year. He completed the 24 laps of the 4.8-kilometre Motegi circuit, 6.1 seconds ahead of Rossi. Nakano completed an incredible home race for Kawasaki with their first MotoGP podium. Title challenger Sete Gibernau was bitterly disappointed with 6th, which leaves him 39 points adrift of Rossi. No points for Max Biaggi, again, ends his title challenge. Spaniards Daniel Pedrosa and Tony Elias scrapped their way to the checkered flag in the 250cc race. Standings leader Pedrosa claimed his 5th Grand Prix win of the season. Elias held on to 2nd, with Japan's Hiroshi Aoma finishing 3rd. Reigning 125 champion Pedrosa is looking good for a 250 title too, but there's plenty of action ahead for the runner-up position. 2 weeks after his first non-scoring race of the season, Andrea Dovizioso bounced back with victory in a crash-strewn 125 race, interrupted before the halfway mark. The Italian cruised to a 4th victory as compatriot Fabrizio Lai edged out another Italian rider, Simone Corsi, into 3rd place. Dovizioso's consistency is paying dividends in the frantic 125 class, although the 2nd and 3rd places will almost certainly go right down to the wire. There was no shortage of excitement in the super final of round 4 of the hybrid Supermoto World Championships at Sachsenring in the former East Germany. With 3 different winners in the S1 class, the 2004 season is the most exciting since the creation of the series 3 years ago. Maintaining a lead proved difficult in a hugely competitive race as Bernd Hierner was chased by Thierry van der Bosch with Walter Baltellini 3rd, Fabrice Gayot 4th, Max Manzo 5th, Boris Chambon 6th and Gerald Delapine 7th. Ivan Lazzarini was Chambon's closest rival for the title, but a crash in the 2nd semi left Lazzarini in hospital with a broken foot, his world title hopes in tatters. After grabbing the lead from Hierner, Van der Bosch led for most of the final. On lap 18, Gerald Delapine surged past, dragging several others in his wake. Sapped by a viral problem, Van der Bosch wilted in the face of mounting pressure, dropping to 4th by the flag but staying ahead of champion Eddie Seal. Delapine took the flag 1.2 seconds ahead of Hierner, completing a Husqvarna 1-2. Max Manzo was 3rd. Delapine won the first Supermoto of his career. He's won a couple of motocross Grand Prix in the past, but there aren't many riders who've won Grand Prix in 2 different sports. So, whether you're driving a dying breed, scoring another title, or just happy to win at home, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.